Trade unions and workers' organizations around the world show their solidarity with the Panamanian trade union movement in general strike against Molino's government. Newly elected South Korean President Lee Jae-Myung took office on Wednesday, a day after winning the snap elections with 49.42% of the nearly 35 million votes cast. Israel has continued to pound Gaza, killing close to 100 people in the last 24 hours across the coastal enclave. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Trade unions and workers' organizations around the world have shown their solidarity with the Panamanian trade union movement, denouncing the government of José Raúl Molino's violent response to the legitimate demands of the Panamanian working class. Organizations from Indonesia, Belgium, the United Kingdom, Germany, Spain and Brazil, as well as the International Labour Organization itself, have expressed their support for the leadership of Panama's National Union of Construction and Similar Workers, SONTRACS, in light of the national government's violent attack on them. Several representatives have gathered outside Panamanian embassies around the world to voice their concerns about the situation in Panama and remind the government that the right to peaceful protest must be upheld.
Hoy hemos sido recibidos por el embajador de Panamá en Francia.
Today we have been received by the ambassador of Panama in France, alongside trade unions, especially the CJT. We are defending the union freedoms of Panama. These have been violated for many months and years. We currently have union leaders who are imprisoned, in addition to bank accounts and trade unions closed without any reason. Therefore, we have come to express our deep concern about the serious situation Panama faces.
Preocupación por la grave situación.
The authorities of the National Electoral Council of Venezuela have announced that the country's next municipal elections have been scheduled for July 27th. From the headquarters of the governing body in the city of Caracas, the president of the electoral authority, Elvis Amoroso, read a statement unveiling the new election schedule. Following a session held on Wednesday, the national board in office informed the Venezuelan people that in compliance with election rules, procedures and the Constitution, elections will be held for mayors and municipal councillors. The schedule sets the dates for the presentations, nominations, approval of the final registry, the start of the campaign, in addition to the General Assembly for indigenous peoples. Venezuelan Oil Minister Delcy Rodriguez highlighted the operability of the Bolivarian nation's oil fields.
We have proved and evidenced how Venezuelan workers in the oil industry are working hard to maintain production in those wells. And I repeat, well, they even showed me earlier an AI doll of me saying this. But at this moment, Chevron is at full production. At this moment, the Eni fields are at full production. At this moment, the Repsol field is at full production. At this moment, the Maurel and Prom field is at full production. And Repsol Eni gas production is also at full. Thanks to whom? To the workers of Venezuela and to our country's own efforts, with or without licenses. Venezuela does not need licenses to develop, nor to be subject to schemes of neocolonialism.
China urged the United States not to interfere in diplomatic and trade relations with South Korea. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said that relations with Seoul are based on common interest and should not be influenced by third countries. The Foreign Ministry reminded that China does not intervene in the internal affairs of other countries due to its principles of non-interference, and therefore advised Washington to follow its example. These statements come amid Beijing's concern over the latest statements by the U.S. government, which accused China of alleged foreign interference. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko in Beijing on Wednesday, who is in the Asian nation on his 15th official visit. During the gathering, Xi congratulated Lukashenko on his re-election as president and highlighted the true friendship and partnership between both countries based on political mutual trust and growing cooperation in all fields. For his part, Lukashenko thanked China for its long-term strong support and assistance to his country, adding that Belarus has high degree trust in the Asian nation and will actively advance cooperation. Furthermore, the head of state expressed his willingness to work with China to safeguard international fairness and justice. Newly elected South Korean President Lee Jae-Myung took office on Wednesday, a day after winning the snap elections with 49.42% of the nearly 35 million votes cast. During his inauguration ceremony held at Rotunda Hall in the National Assembly in Seoul, Lee vowed to rebuild the nation from what he called the brink of collapse following a failed martial law attempt. The head of state faces a daunting set of challenges ranging from healing a country scattered by his predecessor's move to tackling protectionist actions by the United States. In addition, in this context, Lee has expressed more conciliatory plans for ties with China and North Korea, signaling out the importance of Beijing as a major trading partner and vowing to reopen dialogue with Pyongyang. A stampede outside a cricket stadium in the southern Indian state of Karnataka has left several people dead and many injured. The incident took place on Wednesday when thousands of fans gathered outside the China's Swami Stadium in the state capital, Bengaluru, to celebrate the home team's first victory in the Indian Premier League, attempted to enter the venue from various gates. Authorities stated the crowd was uncontrollable, while police at the scene tried to transport the injured to ambulances but were unable to move quickly due to the overcrowding on roads. Local news have reported at least 11 deaths and 33 injured. In this context, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the tragic incident, calling it absolutely heart-rending and offering condolences to the victims' relatives. And now we have a short break coming up. Professor, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum labeled as unfair the rise of steel and aluminum tariffs from 25% to 50%. Sheinbaum highlighted to continue fighting for an agreement with U.S. President Donald Trump in view of the levies. The head of state assured that if a deal was not reached, the government would announce measures to protect Mexico's steel and aluminum industry and employment. In this sense, the leader advanced that she would hold a meeting with the steel and aluminum chambers at the National Palace to make the necessary decisions regarding this issue. On Tuesday, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel hosted Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf at the Palace of the Revolution in Havana. During the meeting, Cuban leader welcomed the Iranian official visit and praised the historical importance of relations between the two countries. Díaz-Canel also ratified Cuba's support for the Persian nation's right to its nuclear capabilities. For his part, the Iranian Parliament Speaker, who previously visited the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, expressed his gratitude for Cuba's support and recalled the historical friendly ties between Havana and Tehran. Both rejected the imposition of coercive measures against free nations. Recent measures by Cuba's telecommunications company ETEXA have sparked social debate in Cuba. Our correspondent Fabiola Lopez tells us what the public thinks.
En las últimas horas en Cuba no se habla de otra cosa.
In the last days in Cuba, everyone is talking about the same thing. The topic is on the streets and on social media. Cuban telecommunications company ETEXA is increasing internet access rates to prices that, for many, are far from the reality of their salaries. The measure is causing dissatisfaction and is being described as unpopular. Many agree that the decision was not adequately explained and that communication failed.
The people were not informed in advance. Look, we are going to take this measure because there are problems with the company. We need investments. In other words, to have an open discussion, but this never happened. The public opinion was bad. I feel disappointed because it affects me and it affects everyone.
I believe that aside from the fact that the measure is unpopular due to its content, it was very poorly communicated.
It is true that it affects the research for our school projects, but we must understand the need the country had to take this measure. It was not taken lightly or arbitrarily. It was done out of a need for foreign currency.
El ciberespacio está que arde.
Cyberspace is on fire and social media are extremely active. Many are warning of the political cost of the measure, while others argue that the internet on the island is on the verge of collapse and that the next headline may not be about a new raid, but rather a nationwide service outage. Authorities insist that there is a real emergency, as the blockade is brutal and the situation is extremely critical due to the lack of foreign currency.
We are facing debts today that we cannot pay, which means that we cannot import more technology, that we cannot import supplies, that we cannot import these things that we must buy abroad, the things that serve us, that we need in order to continue, not to develop and grow, but to maintain the services we currently have.
Memes and fake news are running wild. Bad faith and opportunism arise. Some try to advance their anti-government and counter-revolutionary agenda under the pretext of new internet rates. However, the University Student Federation takes a stand against those who seek to undermine the country's stability. Executives from ETEXA, together with the party and the government, are engaging in constructive dialogue with the students to find solutions.
I was talking about how irresponsible it is in the complex situation we are experiencing to incite violence, disorder, disobedience, and chaos. Because first of all, in Cuba, which is imperfect but improvable, we have an institutional structure that is not the result of the will of the government, but rather the result of a tradition of popular participation that goes back more than 60 years of revolution built with the people, and that tradition provides the space for dialogue. There were calls to rallies and sit-ins on the university steps, calls that have not come from the University Student Federation.
For Professor Ernesto Teuma, the increase in fees, which many consider disproportionate, has resulted in a conflict that does not necessarily have to be seen as negative.
It is an adjustment in the midst of the consumption crisis, the responsibilities of public companies. A conflict in which students and other organizations have played a leading role, which would be from a civic perspective above all for access and guarantee of certain rights. However, it has been quickly exploited by agendas that seek to turn these conflicts into irreconcilable hostilities.
Through his X account, President Miguel Díaz-Canel insists that the revolutionary government is working to provide well-being to the people in the midst of the most criminal siege, and explains that options are being sought out for the most vulnerable sectors. Many say that what is at stake here is not internet access fees, but the credibility of a project that the vast majority is still willing to defend.
Fabiola López, teleSUR, La Habana.
The Directorate General of Migration of the Dominican Republic reported that more than 34,000 Haitians were deported in May following an explicit resolution of the Council of Defense and National Security and the measures of President Luis Abinader. The Migration Agency reported that the deported individuals were in the country illegally and warned that May saw the highest number of deportations in 2025. This increase in immigration enforcement has been supported by by the Army, Navy, Air Force, National Police and Public Ministry. The government justifies the large-scale detention of Haitians fleeing violence of the grounds that it would cause problems for the security and stability of the Dominican population. During its second day, the 11th BRICS Parliamentary Forum taking place in Brazil advocates multilateral cooperation and a balanced and fair world order. Wednesday's session, chaired by the Brazilian Senate's Foreign Relations Committee, reiterated the importance of establishing an open and non-discriminatory multilateral trading system with a new World Trade Organization at its core. The aim is to promote inclusive economic growth and sustainable development in an environmental, economic and social sectors. This is in response to the challenges and geopolitical tensions caused by unilateral protectionist measures that generate global crises. We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final show break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. Israel has continued to bomb Gaza, killing close to 100 people in the last 24 hours across the coastal enclave. Palestinians mourned over the bodies of their relatives at the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis after they were killed in an Israeli drone strike on a tent for displaced persons near the Al-Hanawi school in the south of the enclave. Also, Gaza's health ministry accused Israel forces of striking a hospital building in Deir al-Balah, stating they hit the roof of an administration building at Al-Aqsa Baptist Hospital. In all, at least 95 Palestinians have been killed and 440 injured in Israeli attacks across Gaza in the past 24 hours.
This morning they wanted to evacuate due to an evacuation order, but 2 rockets were fired on the area on children and women, and they were the only ones sitting in the tents. There was no one with them except their big brother and the children, all of them children. They were all ordinary citizens. They had no connection to Hamas or any organizations or anything. They were ordinary people living in tents, safe in God's care. They were sitting, eating breakfast. Then the rockets fell on them and they were all cut up, as you can see.
Zionist occupation forces, together with Israeli settlers, carried out nearly 1,700 attacks during the last month in the occupied West Bank. The Colonization and World Resistance Commission reported that the Israeli army carried out 1,276 attacks, while settlers carried out 415 assaults during the month of May. The Palestinian Authority condemned the increase in Israeli violence against the Palestinian people, highlighting the demolition of buildings and the confiscation of property where Zionist troops set up their military bases, as well as physical aggression, vandalism, and the murder of civilians. The organization stated that Israeli actions represent a clear policy of apartheid, which aims to carry out ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. As attacks continue on Gaza, teleSUR English brings you the latest in the region through its socials as well. Let's see. Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated that Ukrainian attacks on Russian civilians render a ceasefire impossible. During his meeting with government members, the Russian president described Ukrainian attacks on Russian railway bridges as terrorist acts. He claimed that the Kyiv regime is gradually becoming a terrorist organization and that its sponsors are complicit. Putin questioned the possibility of holding a meeting with Ukraine or declaring a ceasefire amid ongoing attacks on civilians.
Everywhere and always during armed conflicts, extremely unfortunately, civilians suffer. But what happened in Bryansk and in Kursk region was a deliberate attack on civilians. According to all international norms, such actions are called terrorism. At the same time, Ukraine calls to suspend hostilities for 30 to 60 days. There are calls for a summit meeting. But how can such meetings be held under these conditions? What is there to talk about? Who negotiates with those who rely on terror, with terrorists?
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.